Man, oh man, can you even believe that it is time already for yet another Pokemon Draft League? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the PPL Pokemon Premier League Season 3 Draft Analysis with me, CBAD, coach of the Detroit Steel Wings. And I gotta be honest right out of the gate, this is probably one of my favorite teams I've ever drafted. There's some Pokemon that I've used before, either in prior gens. A few of them I've used, actually only one of them I've drafted so far in Gen 9, and that is in a draft league that I did offline. I'll be doing a big movie recap on that. That is a lot of footage. I underestimated how long that would take me to put together, so that is still coming. So only one of these Pokemon has been used in Generation 9 so far by me, of course. They have been drafted by other people, but very excited to get to use this team. Very excited to play the other coaches. If you guys are excited for yet another draft league season, leave a like, subscribe if you're new. The description of this video will have a link to the fan doc, the rest of the coaches as well, because week 1 is going up next Sunday. Very excited for the matchup. I'm really looking forward to this league. It has been about a month and some change since you guys are seeing this on the 10th. It's been about a month and some change since my last draft league battle. It's been nice being able to get some R&R, refresh, recoup, relax, unwind, but we are here now, and it is time to get to Draft Leaguing. You guys know me. I absolutely love it. So we're going to be going through, if you guys don't know what this is, we're going to be going through our team. There will be some text in the description down below if you guys want to check around to any of the picks in specific. If you guys know the draft already and just want to hear my thoughts on it. Within this league, this is another point-style league. So for those of you guys just coming off of P4G, where it was a tier-based, where everybody needed one from a certain tier. This is very similar to last season of the Pokemon Premier League, the Shuckle Premier League, things along those lines, where there is a total point value that you get. There are certain requirements that you need to get as far as a minimum of a certain tier or a maximum of a certain tier Pokemon, but within that budget, it is still allowed. Also with the Pokemon Premier League, every Pokemon does have, most every Pokemon, not a lot of the broken ones, but a lot of very powerful Pokemon have the ability to terrestrialize with a point-based system. They are assigned a separate point. For example, one of my Tera captains, I believe, was 8 or 9 points out of my draft budget, but out of my Tera budget, it was about 13 or 14 points, somewhere around there. So it was valued very highly as a Tera captain, maybe not overall in the grand scheme of Draft League itself, but given the option to terrestrialize, it does weigh its budget a little bit more. 2 different budgets. Like I said, check out the fan doc if you guys are a little bit confused about that. But all in all, we had 120 points to draft anywhere between 10 to 12 Mons. And then of those 10 to 12 Mons, we had an additional 27 points to assign Tera captains. These were priced out individually based on, the cost. So something like an Azumarill would be 20 points because huge power, choice band, Tera water just goes crazy. Whereas something like, Swadloon would be 1 point. And based on how many points gives you how many Tera types it is. And I'll talk about a little bit about that when I get to my draft picks as far as why I went with those. And that's really what we're here for. But either way, let's go ahead and start breaking down the team. The first Pokemon that we drafted, so out of 20 coaches, I was 9th. Really, I have not gotten anywhere near a wheel in several years. So I'm really usually right around the middle, maybe a little towards like the first quarter or the back quarter. But historically, I've never had really good luck with the draft slot. But that being said, I still really think the team turned out well. There were some changes made within a 24-hour period. So you'll see some Pokemon that I talk about that are drafted a little bit out of order. You're like, how was that still left on the board? They replaced those Pokemon that I had previously drafted within that 24-hour grace period. So that'll make a little bit more sense, and I'll address those picks as they come up. But first and foremost, let's start talking about the first overall pick. Now, the first overall pick, actually the Pokemon that I talked about that I have used in a Generation 9 draft league. It was used in a level 50 no Tera league, but I still really like the flexibility that it brought. I really like the power that it brought, and I think that it's a really good offensive Pokemon. I think you're going to have a lot of fun with it in this draft league. So, ladies and gentlemen, the first pick in Season 3 of the Pokemon Premier League for the Detroit Steel Wings is King Bradley the Sneasler. Now, King Bradley the Sneasler, let's go on ahead and talk about him. So, first and foremost, 510 base stat total, hits like a truck, 130 base attack, 120 speed. Really, like, there's not too much that, unlike the board, that naturally outspeeds that, right? Like, there's always going to be a Scarfer. There is always going to be, like, something that can set up speed in some way. And if they ever want to try to outspeed me, here's the thing. Sneasler has 3 abilities. Two of them are really good. One of them is situational depending on the game. The situational one is pressure. This Pokemon is the target of a foe's move. That move loses 1 additional PP. Something like Weavile has that. Zapdos, Suicune, things along those lines if you're familiar with that. Its hidden ability is Poison Touch. This Pokemon's contact moves have a 30% chance of poisoning. Sneasler just wants to punch things in the face, so Poison Touch is great, being able to get that additional 30% chance to poison. On top of its signature move, Dire Claw, which is a physical poison move, 80 base power, 100% accuracy. I have a 50% chance to sleep, poison, or paralyze the target. So between Dire Claw and Poison Touch, I'm probably poisoning something or status inflicting something somewhere, right? The last one, when I talked about how some people are going to really need to address like Scarfers and things along those lines, is that it gets Unburdened. My speed is doubled on held item loss. Boost is lost if it switches or it gets a new item or ability. 120 speed with Unburden is insane. That's more than Hawlucha, right? I gotta like double check my own math here. Hawlucha, yeah. Hawlucha has 118 base speed, and Hawlucha Unburden is already hard enough to prep for. Let alone toss in, let alone 120 base speed. I know it's only 2 base speed difference, but my goodness. Let's go ahead and talk about why it. So Sneasler hitting very hard. I think in Draft League right now, I think there's a lot of viability for poison types. I think a lot of people over the past few generations have kind of, what's the word I'm looking for here? Really started to prioritize fairies, and rightfully so. They're very bulky. They can be very offensive. And just being able to get a strong poison type to be able to just kind of cripple those goes a long way, in my opinion. Same thing with dark types. If there is, if you know, for something like Psy Spam, you need a dark type in order to be immune to that. Otherwise, certain psychic types have the appropriate coverage to check their resistances and just sweep teams. So you want a dark type for Psy Spam. You want a fighting type to pick off that dark type so you can then continue to Psy Spam. That's where my head's at. That's where that's going. So with that in mind, just being able to hit hard with like something like Dire Claw with close combat. If I don't want to go for Dire Claw, I can run Gunk Shot. I can run Poison Jab. It's got a bunch of coverage moves here. Acrobatics with Unburden could go crazy. It has setup and bulk up. It has access to Fake Out. Fake Out Poison Touch could be something. Set up with Hone Claws to raise the attack and the accuracy. So Gunk Shot's just always hitting things, which is crazy. Has Low Kick, has Night Slash, has Priority and Quick Attack. Rock Slide, Shadow Claw, Switcheroo, which is really interesting. Very fast taunt user. Of course, I can go for Toxic as a poison type. I will hit 100% of the time. It has access to Toxic Spikes, which is so cool. Trailblaze to boost my speed by 1 if I ever want to run max HP, max attack, and Trailblaze for grass coverage. U-Turn for pivot potential. X-Scissor. Looking down into like the rarely used moves. Nothing too crazy there, but that's Sneasler. That's Sneasler for you. And that's really where I wanted to kind of focus my draft around, is just kind of Sneasler support, things that Sneasler can pick off that other Pokemon can do well with. How can I like build to benefit offensively for Sneasler? So that being said, the next Pokemon for the Detroit Steel Wings roster of Season 3 of the Pokemon Premier League is Darius the Rillaboom. Now, I have used Rillaboom to, in my opinion, to great success in Generation 8, I think in 2, maybe 1 or 2 different leagues. I look back on Rillaboom fondly. I think it's great. Obviously, it did receive some nerfs along the way. The Grassy Glide nerf was a little unfortunate, but it is what it is. 125 base attack stat, pure grass type. It has the Overgrow ability where at a third or less of its max HP, my grass attacks do 1.5 times as much, so essentially like a choice band. Then I also have the hidden ability Grassy Surge, which summons the grassy terrain on switch-in. This can be paired with Sneasler in 2 different ways. Sneasler has a ground weakness. Grassy terrain does nerf the physical output damage of a move like Earthquake. Things like high horsepower, Drill Run, Earth Power, things along those lines are still full power. But Earthquake, a very commonly spammable move with 100% accuracy, we're going to be able to nerf that damage. We can also pair it with something like a Grassy Seed Unburden set to raise my defense. Also consume my item, giving me an Unburden boost, which is awesome. But that's how this pairs a little bit with King Bradley, the Sneasler. Let's talk about Darius the Rillaboom here a little bit. So Rillaboom, like I said, really, really fun mon. I really like it. Overall, it's got 530 base stat total. Has more than Sneasler, quite honestly. Very bulky, 100 base HP, 125 attack, 90 defense, 70 special defense, 85 base speed. So respectable, right? Of course, with the Grassy Terrain and Grassy Glide, I always have that built-in priority. I also have additional priority in moves like Fake Out. I have access to Acrobatics, Body Press, Bulk Up, Drain Punch, Earthquake. This thing gets Earth Power. I didn't even know that. Facade, of course, high horsepower, very strong knockoff user. Leech Seed, I can taunt, I can U-turn, I can wood hammer. Just a lot of really good support from this Pokemon, while also you need to respect it because that is a lot of damage that it can put out, and just giving itself not only priority, but boosting its own priority with the terrain. Absolutely monstrous. Now, next up, I talked about how with King Bradley the Sneasler that poison types are really good for fairies. And I feel like personally in the last few drafts that I've done, I haven't prioritized like a great fairy. Like I've gotten fairy types and they're fine, but I haven't felt like super, what's the word I'm looking for here? Like good about them. Like I feel like I haven't used them right or whatever that may be. And I try to make things super fast when they can't be that fast, and I'm losing out on damage output. So I was thinking about what would benefit from really something along the lines of breaking down dark types, what can potentially help take on dark types, what can benefit from grassy terrain recovery and things along those lines. So the next Pokemon that I drafted for draft pick number 3 of the Detroit Steel Wings is going to be Winry the Hatterene. Now Winry is great. I love her. She has 510 base stat total, just like Sneasler, still holding strong, 510 average, 57 base HP. Okay. That's something. 90 in attack. Okay. 95 defense. That's all right. 136 special attack. I don't think I knew Hatterene had that high of a special attack stat, if I'm being completely honest. That is one of the highest special attack stats that you can possibly draft, let alone like use with the multitude of coverage that it has. 103 special defense, then 29 speed. So that mitigates my own problem of I want the fairies to be fast but defensive. I literally can't make this thing fast. I have a stat I never have to worry about ever. And it's great. It takes the load off. And really, frankly, HP 57, using Draining Kiss and like things like Draining Kiss and Giga Drain for recovery, I'm probably not putting too much into HP. I'm probably pumping that into defense, special attack, and special defense. So I have 3 stats I really need to worry about. It just takes, it's stupid proof at the end of the day, and I absolutely love it. So Hatterene's got a few abilities. Realistically, the only one that I will be bringing is Magic Bounce. This Pokemon blocks certain status moves and bounces them back to the user. So bouncing away status moves like Toxic, Glare, Will-O-Wisp, things along those lines. But we also do bounce back hazards as well. Stealth Rocks, Toxic Spikes, Spikes, Sticky Webs. We can switch those in front of him, or if my opponent goes for it in front of Hatterene, we are able to bounce those right back. Same thing with moves like Parting Shot. You know, we're able to bounce that effect back at the user and things along those lines. So it does provide us a form of hazard mitigation right out the front. Let's talk about 136 base special attack, because that's crazy. So Hatterene does get agility, right? Hatterene gets agility. And if I just do this, 172, if I run max speed, actually, hold on. If I run max speed, Jolly, and I go for an agility, I hit 344 speed, which is still probably not enough to. It forces a Sneasler to run Jolly. That's more than Rillaboom and things like. Okay. No, I'm never running agility Hatterene, never in my life. It does have access to passing and baton pass. Now this is only a dry pass league. I cannot pass stats or substitutes, so I can just use this for some sort of momentum. We do have access to Calm Mind and Setup. Then we start talking about the coverage moves, right? Dark Pulse, Dazzling Gleam, Draining Kiss, Future Sight, Giga Drain, support in Healing Wish. We have support in Light Screen. We have Mystical Fire for Steel types. We've got access to Nuzzle, 100% chance to paralyze the target. We've got Recovery and Pain Split. We've got access to Psychic, Psychic Noise, Psyshock, Reflect Support Control, Shadow Ball, Stored Power, Substitute, Thunderwave, Trick Room for that 29 base speed. It really is a super cool mon that just makes me not have to worry about how to build it. There are 3 stats that I am going to pump into, and the rest of them are insanely negligible, and that is so good for me. Very, very excited to use this Pokemon in combination with Grassy Terrain, being able to get that recovery. Something like a Grassy Seed, Stored Power set could be something fun to run, especially because our special defense is just monstrous. Absolutely love that. At this point in the draft, I wanted to really grab some high-value Tera captains. And the thought behind that is really, I feel like sometimes my Tera captains are, you know, I look a little too much at the budget, right? I look at like, oh, I can get 5 Tera captains that can all have 4 terrestrial options. Like that does nobody any favors when someone take a look, for example, the P4G quarterfinals match against Joey. The semifinals, quarterfinals, I don't remember where we got to. We got somewhere. It was a quarterfinal, semifinals. We got to semis. Yeah, we got semis against Joe. We did quarterfinals against SK. Yeah, we did that. Okay. Look at the semifinals match against Joe, right? Tera Dragon Flapple. That's a monster. That's a monster. What was Servine or Doug Trio doing to that, right? No offense to either of them, but it was just a monster. So I wanted Tera captains that really are like, damn, I need to prepare for this. So looking around, again, Pokemon that can capitalize on the grassy terrain, Pokemon that provide me some utility both as a Tera captain and not as a Tera captain. The next Pokemon that I drafted 4th overall for the Detroit Steelwings in PPL Season 3 is Alex Louise the Rhyperior. Rhyperior is a rock and ground type Pokemon with 535 base stat total. So far, the highest base stat total of the draft so far, round number 4, mind you. Ground and rock type Pokemon. It has 3 abilities, 2 of which are useful, 1 of which is funny that it has it because it literally gets no moves to benefit from it. The absolutely useless ability is Reckless. This Pokemon's attacks with recoil or crash damage have 1.2 times power. I literally have no recoil or crash damage moves. None. I don't believe it's ever gotten them. So Reckless as a hidden ability is like, why? Why did you put this here? I'd rather it be Illuminate, like something that has an in-game feature at least. Lightning Rod. So this Pokemon draws electric moves to itself to raise special attack by 1 and acts as an electric immunity. As a ground type, that doesn't do me too many favors, but as a Tera captain, it definitely does. And then lastly, its most probably commonly brought ability, at least in my eyes, Solid Rock. This Pokemon receives 3/4 damage from super effective attacks. Gives it just tremendous bulk. So being able to not only act as a giant wall itself, being an electric immunity, being able to just tank those super effective hits just better because of Solid Rock is great. 115 base HP, 140 attack. 130 defense, 55 special attack, 55 special defense, and 40 in speed. So takes a lot of physical pressure. The special defense, not so great. That's probably going to be pretty pumped up for a lot of matches. You can rock that with like an Assault Vest. You can run, like a Careful Nature Rhyperior. You can just pump a lot of EVs into there. You can also utilize something like Solid Rock to hopefully mitigate a lot of that damage there. And then base 40 speed, nothing too crazy. So one thing first is that so let's talk about with the grassy terrain itself, being able to mitigate, again, that earthquake damage. I've got a lot of ground moves that I can go for with like high horsepower or drill run, but also that earthquake coming back at me is not going to do nearly as much damage because of the grassy terrain. Also because of Solid Rock. Something like Hatterene being able to use Trick Room support for a Pokemon like Rhyperior that has base 40 speed, that can just come in and just start swinging. I absolutely love it. Let's talk about coverage moves, then we'll talk about Tera types. As far as coverage moves, I mean, this thing, it's kind of wild what it gets for coverage. So it gets access to moves like Avalanche, Body Press, Brick Break to remove screens, Counter to double back physical damage, Crunch it can set up with Curse. It does, actually, you know what? It does have Double Edge. You could run Reckless Double Edge. Actually, you know what? Take that back. I'm going to run Reckless Double Edge there we go. Got it. Dragon Tail for phasing out. Has access to Drill Run, Earthquake, Facade, Fire Fang, Fire Punch, Hammer Arm, Heat Crash, and Heavy Slam. This thing's heavy. Those are going to hurt. High horsepower. Niche coverage moves like Ice Beam, Ice Fang, Ice Punch, Iron Defense, Iron Head, Mega Horn, Outrage, Poison Jab. You can set up with Rock Polish. You can set up with Swords Dance. You got Shadow Claw. You got Smackdown to remove ground immunities, then blast them in the face with a Drill Run. You can set up rocks. You got Stone Edge. You got access to Supercell Slam, 100 base power electric moves. I don't care about bulky waters anymore. I'm just clicking Supercell Slam. Absolutely fantastic, Mon. Really love this. So talking about the Tera types, as far as what I wanted for this one, I didn't feel like, in other draft leagues, you needed to, like last season in the P4G, you needed to choose one of the Pokemon's natural types and then 2 other of the other 2 types that you wanted, right? There is no type requirement in this league, but again, based on how many points that these Pokemon were worth as a Tera captain dictates how many Tera types they can get. So again, a Pokemon like Azumarill, a Pokemon like Rillaboom, for example, very highly rated as a Tera captain, can only get 1 Tera type. So, something like Rillaboom could be Tera Fire to mitigate its fire and ice weakness. It could be Tera Grass to boost the Grassy Glide and the Wood Hammer damage. So Rhyperior, I am not required to terrestrialize into either a ground or rock, and I am allowed to terrestrialize into 2 different options. The first one being Fairy. Tera Fairy, I think, is just always good to have in general, both offensively and defensively. In Rhyperior's case, probably a little bit more defensively. just being able to shrug away what is probably a really big fighting weakness. Being able to shed a lot of our common weaknesses with ground and rock as well allow us to set up and just kind of handle those a little bit better. A lot of common poisoned or steel type moves are likely going to be a bit more physical unless they're running like Gengar or Glimora or something with Sludge Bomb or Shadow or Sludge Wave. So a lot of those moves are going to be physical, which we can take advantage of with our huge special or huge physical defense stat and our solid rock ability as well. So that's always good for us. The other Tera type that I wanted to go for, and this is again just kind of keeping in mind how can I utilize Rhyperior's natural, just what it brings to the table to my advantage paired with a Tera type. And so I went with Tera Water. A bulky water type is always something good to have, quite honestly. I think it's one of the staples in draft next to like a fast water type, right? A bulky water type with Lightning Rod leaves us with just a weakness to grass moves. And we have ways to kind of check those with a lot of resistances and really just make sure that if our opponent doesn't bring a grass type, they're just in a bad spot against us. There's no way to hit us super effectively anymore, and Rhyperior is a huge problem for them now. So that's going to be Rhyperior, our first of 2 Tera captains. On the way back, so we went down, back, Hatterene, Rhyperior. On the way back down for pick number 5, like I said, I'm trying to capitalize on Pokemon that I think could be very, very valuable Tera captains. And I alluded to it a little bit there, just talked about Rhyperior. I think there's 2 really good Pokemon that a lot of people are often utilize in Draft League. Those are your bulky water types, your defensive backbones. But also fast water types can be really punishing, and just not having the appropriate resist. I mean, a lot of water and ice and random third move here can cover a lot of teams. So a fast, hard-hitting water type Pokemon can be very, very beneficial to the team. That being said, 5th overall for the Detroit Steel Wings Season 3 of the PPL, I drafted Hawkeye the Inteleon. Now, Hawkeye is a fantastic Pokemon, 530 base stat total. I had a lot of fun prepping for this in the P4G against Joey. And I was like, this Pokemon actually is really, really cool. I want to try using this. How ridiculously hard is this to prep for? And in a fun way. I've said in prior drafts where I've drafted something like Ditto, where I'm like, it's going to be fun to my opponent's going to have to think about it, and I never brought it. Inteleon's different. Inteleon's like, this is going to be hard to prep for, and I'm here for it. Like, I'm good this every game. Like, this is crazy. So let's talk about Inteleon. So Inteleon, 530 base stat total. Has 2 abilities. It has the normal water starter ability and Torrent at 1/3 or less of my max HP. My water moves receive a 1.5 times boost, similar to a Choice Specs. Then it has its hidden ability Sniper. If this Pokemon strikes with a critical hit, the damage is multiplied by 1.5. That's awesome, because critical hits already hurt a lot, then multiplied by another 1.5. We're just doing a lot of damage. Now, Inteleon is not very bulky, if at all. 70 base HP, 65 defense, 65 special defense. Not doing too much. 85 attack. So Flip Turn's going to do something, right? U-Turn's going to tickle something there, right? What really makes it valuable? 120 base speed, right on par with Sneasler. So we've got some insane speed right now. We've got all the way at the top at 120 with Sneasler and Inteleon. We've got all the way down to the bottom at 29 and 40 with Hatterene and Rhyperior. 120 base speed, 125 special attack. I'm trying to draft mons that just consistently have some very insane offensive output, and then some Pokemon that can act as a defensive backbone in certain scenarios. Now, Inteleon I think is great. So Inteleon I think can get slotted into 4-move syndrome a little too much, but it does have some niche utility. And frankly, I think Pokemon, I keep talking back to Pokemon with his Inteleon. I think he showcased that really well at something like a Swords Dance Inteleon, a base 85 attack stat. You're like, that's okay. +2, that's gonna hurt. That's still gonna hurt. So let's talk about it. So from a physical side, things like acrobatics, things like let's talk about it from both sides. I'm just gonna read down here. So acrobatics for a physical set, Air Slash, Aqua Jet, Baton Pass if we don't want a U-turn or flip turn for whatever reason, has access to Blizzard, Dark Pulse, Flip Turn, Haze to eliminate stat changes, Hydro Pump, Ice Beam, Ice Shard, Icicle Spear. It can run dual screens, fast screen setter. So Hatterene, a slow screen setter, Inteleon, a fast screen setter. On the physical side, Liquidation, Scald, Shadow Ball, Snipe Shot, a high critical hit ratio move, cannot be redirected. Has access to Substitute, Sucker Punch, Surf, Swords Dance, very fast taunt user, U-turn, Weather Ball, Terra Blast, etc. So something like a Snipe Shot from a Sniper set Inteleon is going crazy. How can that be better? I'm glad you asked. So looking at Inteleon, so again, Inteleon, very similar to Rhyperior, was valued pretty highly as a Tera captain as another 13-point Tera captain. So Rhyperior being 13 points and Teleon being 13 points. We fit our 27-point budget. And Teleon, first and foremost, Tera Water. Tera Water, Snipe Shot, Sniper boosted, just insane damage output. Even just Choice Specs Hydro Pump or Scald off Tera Water is going absolutely crazy. But that is, I mean, that's really just to do the most damage possible with water. There's very little that resists that alongside a coverage move that I can get, except for some cheeky water ground mons that have like Water Absorb or something. So that's why my second Tera type is Tera Grass. So I can hit them with a Grass Tera Blast and go on my merry way of just clicking Snipe Shot in front of everything. I'm super pumped for this. I'm super pumped. I know it seems kind of like, oh, you just got it because it can crit a lot. Yeah, same reason why people draft Jirachi. So, very excited. No one drafts Jirachi because like it's a good defensive mon with like niche. Like you draft it because it has Serene Grace. Thank God it fits a role on your team. That's really what. So yes, that's why you draft Inteleon. Any questions? No. Moving on. So from here, the part of grassy terrain really utilizing or really minimizing, earthquake damage. There's a lot more ground moves. A lot more Pokemon have coverage for ground moves. So even though I can keep them all from going for Earth Power or Earthquake, Earth Power, Scorching Sands, High Horsepower, Drill Run, all of those things are still affected. And I have no ground immunity just yet. This Pokemon I have not used yet in Gen 9. I almost did, but I have used it in Gen 8. I'm a very, very big fan of this Pokemon. I'm still sitting above that 500 base stat total that we've got at 510. I drafted Olivier the Mandibuzz. The Mandibuzz is a dark and flying type Pokemon. It has 3 abilities. Big Pecs prevents the other Pokemon from lowering this Pokemon's defense stat stage. Overcoat, this Pokemon is immune to powder moves, sandstorm damage, and effect spore. And then weak armor, if a physical attack hits this Pokemon, my defense is lowered by 1, but my speed is raised by 2. Most commonly probably going to run either Big Pecs or Overcoat, depending on the matchup. Mandibuzz provides me a psychic immunity for the team, which right now the only resist was Winry the Hatterene. And it also provides me a ground immunity, which so far we had 2 Pokemon that were really weak to that. You always want a ground immunity. There's very few Pokemon that resist it, and if you just get the ball rolling with a strong ground type, it can be game over very quickly. So wanted one of those. Let's talk about Mandibuzz and what it does for the team. So right now, the only form of hazard removal that I have is Hatterene, and that is with Magic Bounce. I believe Mold Breaker Excadrill was drafted. I believe the Ogre Ponds were drafted. I don't think Fire Ogre Pond was drafted, actually. Never mind. So I'm trying to think of like Mold Breaker Pokemon that have access to hazards and things like that can supersede my Magic Bounce. But as an example, that's my only form of hazard removal is hopefully they do it and I switch in Hatterene, or they forget about my ability and they try to set hazards in front of Hatterene. But so in that case, we do have access to Defog. Tried and true Mandibuzz is a very, very strong Defogger. Of course, has access to Brave Bird, has access to some coverage moves and things like Heat Wave, can set up with Iron Defense, can go for Knockoff. You can run a Nasty Plot set, has Recovery and Roost, can have Tailwind support, can Taunt, it can Toxic, it can U-Turn, it can Whirlwind. Very good utility Pokemon. I never see Mandibuzz as like a front runner for an offensive Pokemon or like this is my win con. Mandibuzz is a very respectable HP stat, 110 HP, 105 special defense, 95 special defense. Really, like, very solid, well-rounded Pokemon. 65 attack, 55 special attack. I'm like, there will be movement on the HP bar. How much? I don't know. And then 80 base speed, actually. So it can outpace some slower mons, and with some investment, maybe some faster mons that aren't as well invested on that. So we can get like a fast Defog, fast Toxic, fast Foul Play off there and go from there. Now, the next Pokemon is one that I'm going to talk about because this was not available to me during the draft. This was not given to me. This was released during free agency. And I initially wanted it for the team. And when it went, I drafted a completely different team, which I liked, but I actually like this team a lot more. This Pokemon is a tried and true member of any grassy terrain build. Very common in things like Sun and Moon when Tapu Bulu was around. Very prevalent in Generation 8 as well. The next Pokemon that we drafted is Alphonse the Heatran. Heatran and Rillaboom are homies. They like grassy terrain and Heatran, just so great. Obviously, Heatran having a very glaring weakness to a 4x weakness to ground, a very strong weakness to water. Rillaboom resists and mitigates some of that ground damage as well. The weaknesses that Rillaboom has, Heatran is able to eat up very, very nicely. So they two just go very, very well together. Heatran is a fire and steel type. It has 2 abilities. Flash Fire, where this Pokemon's fire attacks do 1.5 times damage if hit by a fire move. Also acts as a fire immunity. And then we have Flame Body, which is a 30% chance that a Pokemon making contact with this Pokemon will be burned. Flame Body is a great ability as long as it works. Now, what is so cool about Heatran? So Heatran has 600 base stat total. Highest base stat total we've seen the entire draft so far. Hits like an absolute truck. Very similar in a sense almost to how I feel about Hatterene. I'm talking about how there's really only 3 stats that I'm going to probably pump into, and that's about it. Heatran can do that, but there's some opportunity also to toss a little bit extra here and there. So let's talk about Heatran's stats. 91 base HP, 90 attack. Okay. 106 defense, 106 special defense. All right. 77 speed. Okay. 130 special attack. Nice. As far as it goes, I mean, it's got some really cool moves. You've obviously know about, if you've seen any competitive Pokemon with Heatran, you obviously know things like Heat Wave, Magma Storm, Stealth Rock, Flash Cannon. Has Body Press, Body Slam, Crunch, Dark Pulse, Dragon Pulse, Earth Power, Earthquake, Flame Charge. That could be fun. Flame Charge, Flash Cannon, Heat Crash, Heavy Slam, Iron Defense, Iron Head, Lunge. I don't think I knew that it got. Overheat, Power Gem, Rock Blast, Rock Slide, Scorching Sands. It does have access to Stealth Rock, so we now have a second Stealth Rocker on the team alongside Rhyperior. It can also taunt. It has access to Will-O-Wisp, among a much more. Really excited. I'm very happy. So this originally, like I said, did not get drafted. I did not draft this. Another coach did, and they reached out and were like, hey, during free agency, I'm thinking about, not using this. Did you want to trade? And I was like, with budgets and things like that, it's hard to pick up a trade. So they were like, well, I'm going to drop it anyway. So if you want it, it's there. And I had a really hard time trying to get it to work. And I think this version of the team, like I said, is the best version of the team. I like the other one, but this one I think really came together. And I think Heatran's a key piece to that, honestly. So looking at the team, we now need, meeting the draft requirements, right? We've talked a lot about I think one of the things that makes a Pokemon draft that much better are kind of the stipulations, right? You have to draft within certain parameters, certain budgets, a maximum of certain things, a minimum of certain things. And the next thing was that when we categorize these Pokemon by letter grade, so S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier, there was a minimum requirement of 2 D tier pick Pokemon for each draft. Every team needed at least 2 to kind of have that bottom line. And then the rest, just use your points however you want to. You can't get, more than 1 S tier Pokemon, and you obviously can't go over your budget. You need 10 to 12 Pokemon. So really wanted to focus on my D tiers next. I really wanted to make sure that I got my value out of those. Again, a lot of those requirements that some people might think about, they end up putting off till last and just grab whatever's left. I wanted to find some value out of there. So looking at the team so far, we don't have an electric type Pokemon, and I wanted to fix that. So next up, we are bringing Sloth the Electivire. Electivire is a homie, man. I believe I've used Electivire before. I'm 95% confident that I have drafted Electivire before. If not, I should have, because it's super fun. It's super fun. So Electivire's got 540 base stat total, 75 HP, 123 attack, 67 defense is its lowest stat. It has 95 special attack, 85 special defense, and 95 speed. 2 abilities, one more useful than the other. The less useful ability, in my opinion, is Vital Spirit. This Pokemon cannot fall asleep, so if my opponent's going for Hypnosis, Spore, something like that, my Vital Spirit will protect me. Other than that, it has Motor Drive. This Pokemon's speed is raised by 1 stage if hit by an electric move, and is an electric immunity. So now we have 2 electric immunities on the team in Rhyperior, technically Lightning Rod Rhyperior if we decide to Terrasilize, or just normal Rhyperior, the ground type, and we have Motor Drive Electivire to help cover the electric weakness that Mandibuzz and Inteleon present. 95 base speed is also pretty respectable. We do have ways to boost our speed, obviously, through our Motor Drive ability, and with the 123 attack and the 95 special attack, we have the opportunity to run either a physical set, a mixed set. Unlikely we run a full special set, but we can definitely toss some special coverage moves on there if needed. Taking a look at its moveset, access to moves like Body Slam, Brick Break. It can set up with Bulk Up, Cross Chop, Discharge, Double Edge, Earthquake, Facade, Fire Punch, Flamethrower, Hammer Arm, Focus Blast, Ice Punch. Another very strong knockoff user. Has, again, access to screens and Light Screen and Reflect, Low Kick, Psychic, Priority, and Quick Attack. Rock Slide. It has Supercell Slam. Thank God, because before that it was Thunder Punch or Wild Charge, and no one wanted either of those. So Supercell Slam is there. It has Taunt. It can switch out with Volt Switch. And then it also has access to Trailblaze, another way to boost our speed. And like I said, 95 base speed is not the world's best, especially with a lot of the power creeping that's gone on over the generations. But going for a Trailblaze can put us into a really good spot where it requires a faster Mon to come in and try to put us down. Depending on the situation, we can either look to build around that and take that hit or switch out into one of our checks accordingly. Next Pokemon, again, looking into the best opportune D tier Pokemon that I can get. What's going to help round out the team? What's really like the most bang for my buck in this category here? And the next Pokemon that I grabbed, second to last of the draft, is Isaac the Glastrier. Now, I have been on a VGC kick recently, so I was a little partial to this just with Cali Ice Rider and a lot of Regulation G that I had been playing in, but Glastrier in a singles type is pretty formidable. And that's not a Tera Captain. It can be if I ever want to switch that up, but I don't think I want to right now. We'll see how the tables turn down the weeks. Maybe I'll end up changing my mind and making a Tera Captain. But this right here is awesome. So it has one ability, signature ability, Chilling Neigh. This Pokemon's attack is raised by one stage if it attacks and knocks out another Pokemon. Glastrier has 580 base stat total, second highest in the draft, in our draft, excuse me. And let's go ahead and talk about what it can do. So 100 base HP, 145 attack, 130 defense, 110 special defense, 65 special attack, 30 speed. I already talked about it before. I love those Pokemon that make building stupid proof because I'm never putting a special attack investment. I'm never running Ice Beam Glastrier, right? Speed is maybe if I run like Trailblaze or like Blizzard and Blunder Policy, but I probably never need to run speed on this thing. So that leaves HP, attack, defense, and special defense really is my only thing. And attack, I don't have to worry about as much because I have an ability that constantly boosts that as I'm knocking out Pokemon. So another Pokemon that to me just kind of simplifies the building process a little bit, if you will. Let's go ahead and talk about its moves. So it's got access to Avalanche, Body Press, Body Slam, Close Combat, Crunch. It can set up with Curse, Double Edge, Facade, Heavy Slam. I didn't realize how heavy Glastrier was. Heavy Slam's crazy. High Horsepower, Icicle Crash, Iron Defense, Lash Out, Outrage, Roar, Stomping Tantrum can set up with Swords Dance. It can Taunt, Throat Chop, Trailblaze, Zen Headbutt, among other moves. This Pokemon is going to be slept on, in my opinion. I think people are going to sleep on Glastrier because it is not a Tera Captain. If it were a Tera Captain, I think people might prioritize it more, but not being Tera, I think some people may just think of it as like, am I really going to worry about the horse? You better worry about the horse. You better worry about the horse. So lastly on the team, there's certain roles that I feel that I needed to meet. I'm a big believer in Draft League that if there are immunities, you want to draft them. So a flying type to be a ground immunity, a ground type to be an electric immunity, so on and so forth. And I think if there's as much of those natural immunities that you can get as opposed to like ability-based ones, so like Flash Fire, Heat Train, and things like that, you really want to get those and you want to capitalize on them. And I was down to, I think, a handful of points, and I could either draft two Pokemon that I wasn't really like a fan of, and I was just drafting them to fill a role, or I could draft something a little bit higher, something that frankly I'm a little bit uncomfortable with. And that's only because I've never used it, and I talk about it every time I've ever had to prep for it in Draft League, where if somebody uses it and uses it well, they have all my respect because I don't know if I can play well with this Pokemon. Frankly, I do not. But I did draft it because it does actually fill the roles that I needed. It fits a nice speed tier at 110. It's got a great attack stat at 100, 125 special attack. It hits very, very hard. Like I said, fits a nice speed tier in between where like Sneasler and like Electivire were hitting right up in there in the middle hundreds. So it allows me to kind of plan my speeds a little bit better out there. And it also forces my opponent to really think about the game if it does show up. The last Pokemon that I drafted for Season 3 of Pokemon Premier League is Envy the Hisuian Zoroark. Now, Envy, E-N-V-Y, is a normal and ghost type Pokemon. So I needed to draft a fighting immunity, a normal immunity, and a ghost immunity. I still needed those three, and I could find some of them if I grabbed like Spiritomb and Munchlax, but this Pokemon covers them both. I am immune to ghost type moves because I'm a normal type. I'm immune to fighting and normal type moves because I'm a ghost type, giving me what I wanted overall. Hisuian Zoroark has the illusion ability. This Pokemon appears as the last Pokemon in the party until it takes direct damage. So if my opponent, if this shows up, all of a sudden there's a mind game they need to play of like identifying, residual damage that's done on a Pokemon. If they toxic me, does the same Pokemon come in later untoxic? Does a certain ability, so like Grassy Terrain Rillaboom, does Grassy Terrain not come off because it's disguised as Zoroark, and Zoroark's not going to pop the terrain, things along those lines. So it does provide that extra layer of mind game, something that I have to keep in mind and kind of play around myself and think about how my opponent will react a little bit. Let's go ahead and talk about Hisuian Zoroark, because this Pokemon, like I said, very respectable attack, special attack, and speed. Has access to, of course, its signature ghost move, Bitter Malice, a 75 base power ghost move, having a 100% chance to lower the target's attack by 1. I have access to Body Slam, Brick Break. I can set up with Calm Mind, Crunch. I can go for Curse. Because I am a ghost type, it will put a curse on the opponent. Dark Pulse, Extra Sensory, Facade, Flamethrower, Focus Blast, Foul Play, Grass Knot, Hex, Hone Claws, Hyper Voice, Knockoff, Lash Out, Low Kick, Memento, a Nightshade, Pain Split, Poltergeist. Stab Poltergeist goes crazy. You guys don't remember the Decidueye sweep I pulled off with a burnt Decidueye? Stab Poltergeist goes crazy. Psychic, it has access to Roar, Shadow Ball, Shadow Claw, Shadow Sneak. Sludge Bomb can set up with Swords Dance, can Taunt, can U-Turn, can Will-O-Wisp, can Trick. Provides a lot of utility, but also, like I said, fits a role that I needed on the team. And hopefully this draft pick will help me grow as a player. I've historically said, if you've been a long-time viewer of this channel, whenever I prep against a Zoroark, or Hisuian Zoroark for that matter, I'm like, man, I could never do that. I could never go into that battle and add that like 4th or 5th additional layer of, can I get in my opponent's head during the game? And hopefully drafting that will force me to do that, and really put me in some situations where I'm forced to grow as a player, because I think that's where we're at now in Draft League. Very comfortable with my skill level that I've gotten. Or I'm happy with the skill level that I've gotten, but I'm not comfortable with where I'm at. I want to continue to grow and be the best player that I can be. And doing so and drafting Pokemon that are a little bit outside of my immediate comfort zone is going to help me do that. At the very end of the day, if it doesn't go well, I can say, hey, I did it. It is not for me. And I make some Draft League and, some free agency transactions. But all that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be the team for this season of the Pokemon Premier League. Let me know in the comment section down below. What do you guys think of the team? Like I said, I think this is probably a top 5 team for me. I really like this team. I like the team comp. I like the synergy. But of course, you guys, the fans at home, let me know what you guys think about this team in the comment section down below. Leave a like if you're excited for the season. Subscribe if you're new. Week 1 next week, we're going up against my buddy Vepsis. I am so excited to battle my little Dino. It is not even funny. We've got our work cut out for us, but I'm looking forward to it, and I hope you guys are too. All that being said, I want to remind you guys to be great and do great, and I'll see you on the next video. Later.